Thank you for tuning in. Today, I would like to introduce to you Francis Krause.
Hi, Erin. Thank you for asking me to come on and talk about my story today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for joining us. Can you please
So,
tell us a little bit about yourself?
okay, so just about myself is that I'm a mum of two children. They are 8 and 6, so a lot of my time is spent trying to navigate their lives, and also we have past trauma from domestic violence relationships, so helping them to navigate uh, that as well. I currently am restudying to change my career path just due to my life and stuff. I also, not that it really matters, but I'm 47. And yes, I did have my children a lot later in life, but that's due to my life and my circumstances. So I'm studying to become a healer. I'm currently doing a holistic creatives art therapist because, as you can probably tell from behind me, I'm art based, which is where I wanted to head. But I've also taken up some other modalities that I'm currently studying, one being embodied processing, and I'm just taking things as they come at the moment. That's pretty much my story and who I am at the moment.
Thank you. And I'd love to hear your journey.
Oh, my trauma journey is pretty complex. So the probably best for me to start from where I am now, and I'm on the other side of a domestic violence. My ex-husband was had narcissistic tendencies and that, and but prior to that, my whole childhood, I've realized now on the other side with all of my studies and everything like that, that I actually grew up in a very narcissistic environment where both of my parents had narcissistic tendencies. I have a I have a lot of childhood traumas, which has taken the effect of that. I ended up in a DV relationship because I was unaware of what was happening to me was not the normal. So my normal was accepting that people treated you badly, that the things that were said and done to you, I never learned how to set boundaries. I never learned to listen to my body and what it was trying to tell me. And the stuff that got me through to this point would have been my art because it is a creative outlet. Also, later on, when I was in my early 30s, I had the most beautiful dog ever. Her name was Georgie, and she was a Staffy Cross, and she was my constant companion, and she was just a beautiful dog, and I'm so grateful that she was in my life for as long as she did. She actually got to see the birth of my children as well. So my daughter remembers her because she's the eldest, but my son has no recollection of her because he was only not even one when she passed, and stuff, and I still miss her, but I've learnt to deal with that. And it's just, I find I tell a little bit of my story to people, and they always go, "Oh, that's so much like you dealing with so much." And it's just like a tiny tip of the iceberg, and I'm like, you don't realize how much there is under there. But it's only through doing therapy and my own research and stuff that I came to understand that I have complex PTSD due to my childhood trauma, and that the reason why I ended up with such a narcissistic style person as a partner was that I felt it was safe because it was what I knew. I knew no different. And then, so that was in 2013, I met him. But in 2010 was when I first got diagnosed with anxiety and depression. At the time, I didn't want to go on medication because there was such a stigma around taking medication and all of that. And I was like, but my doctor explained to me that you use it as a tool because it helps to clean your mind so that when you go and do your therapies, you get the benefits from it with a clearer perspective. So I thought, and I to this day, I can still distinctly remember the point of when my medication actually started working. And I can still remember where I was. I was on a train on the way to work, and I just sat there and I just had this like everything just seemed so much clearer, it was less foggy. And I can distinctly remember thinking to myself, is this how everyone else feels? Is this what not having anxiety and depression feels like? Is this how everybody else sees the world? Because it just felt so alien to me, considering that it would have been in my mid-20s. So for 20 plus years, that was how I saw the world.
Most of your life.
Most of my life. Yep, most of my life. And even to the point of to the point of the 2013 when I met my husband, I was still doing I was doing had done talk therapy, done a bit of cognitive, so the CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. I've had a couple of other uh, psychologists and therapists, and I had done some of the stuff that I'm studying in my creative arts therapist course, where I did the sand play, some of the art stuff and meditation. But it wasn't until 2021 so that I had a major like shutdown, because that was I was born in 1977, and 2021 was when my body had finally gone, no, you can't do this anymore. So I'd had my daughter and my son. I was working full time, and I was also doing other activities, and I was must have looking back now, I knew, but I wasn't acknowledging it, that what was happening with my ex-husband. But my body was telling me, because I actually went into I had um a, vitamin deficiency anemia. So basically my body was just shutting down. It wasn't holding anything. I was exhausted all the time. I couldn't even just go to the shops and do anything. And then my husband pipes up and goes to me that I had to either drop doing one of the outside activities that I had committed to, or I had to cut back my hours to cope with how I was and my lack of energy. And that was when I realized that it was all about him doing what he wanted to do, and that it was nothing about me or my health. It was, you need to do this because he couldn't cope with me not having the time and energy to look after the children. But and then we had a argument, as you do. And it was the first time that he physically restrained me. So he pinned me up onto the wall in our bedroom and put his hand over my mouth so that I couldn't talk.
That would have been really
And
scary.
it was, but it wasn't, because up until I met him, I'm actually a very strong-willed, very independent person. But slowly over time, during the relationship with him, I realized now looking back that I'd lost myself. I lost who I was. I lost my identity. I lost my ability to be strong and make decisions and look after myself. But I always had, growing up, there was a lot more recognition, a lot more knowledge and understanding around domestic violence. So there was a big campaign in Australia at that time, while I was growing up through school. So I always had this vision in my head that domestic violence was physical or sexual in nature, or what you would call the major traumas, not all the little things. So I always felt that soon as, if anyone ever hit me, that was it, I was gone. So that would have been my turning point, because he actually physically assaulted me,
Your
in that
breaking point.
yeah, that was my breaking point. And then having my daughter sitting on my lap, who would have been 5 at the time, crying and saying that she didn't want to live in this house anymore. And then my 3-year-old starting to treat me like his father was treating me, and then I just snapped. So
I would have too.
I just had it. I'd had enough, and I left. And one of the hardest things when you are in a domestic violence situation is the leaving. Because I realized before that I actually had tried to leave a couple of other times, but I always came back.
And it can
But
be
I
one of
wasn't
the
at the
most
point.
dangerous times.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we stayed separated, but my situation was that I actually had nowhere to go, because I had one of the things that happened was I was isolated. I had really had no friends that I could rely on. And because of my realization about my family and how toxic they were, I actually had disconnected from them back in 2014. I actually had no connection with family at all. So I literally had no support other than my ex-husband. So I did reach out to some family that was actually estranged. So my family had already split up quite a few years ago, and they were estranged, and they had contact. I did have a little bit of contact with them. I did contact them, and for a short period of time, I think it was only like 3 months, I did have support from them, but they did not understand that how much the trauma had affected me and stuff, and they hadn't seen me like interacted with me for so long, so they were unaware of the way that I presented myself was my protection. One thing is with trauma, and I'd learnt this from a very young late age, is to be disconnected from my emotions. So I would to show emotions and have them physically shown in your face and your body, or even your voice, was dangerous. So they didn't understand that, and so that support was withdrawn. And then had nowhere to go. I had no support where I was. I didn't know anyone. I was terrified, and it was the second time so the first one was my breaking point when I left, but that time too was the worst panic attack I'd ever had, to the point where I couldn't breathe. I couldn't I was And the only lifeline I had at the time was my ex-husband, because even though I still hadn't come to the realization of all of what he'd done, or that accepting what he'd done was abuse. So I had contacted him, and then the only place I could go was back to the house that we were in, because he had the room. I didn't have anywhere else to go, and I thought at least I had someone else's help with the children. So
Understand.
we were lived, yeah, so we lived together for a short while, but I already had a domestic violence order, which is a protection order in Australia
Are you
on
in
him.
Australia?
Yes, I'm in Australia. So I I ended up having to breach him because through doing while we was here, I started finding stuff by myself on healing and understanding trauma because I'd actually been confirmed and diagnosed with a complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I wanted to find more information about it and how it affected you and stuff. And then through that I came to accept and understand that yes, I was being what I was what my ex-husband was doing was abuse. And then there was an incident which involved my daughter where I actually called the police. And it was when they came out, that was the time that I actually decided that I actually had to admit to myself what was happening because they asked me whether or not I wanted to breach him. The only thing that helped me and that actually made me do the breach, and the only thing that helped me focus was that I was doing it to protect my children, not to protect myself, but to protect my children. But also in that moment, I realized now that that was me admitting that what he was doing was wrong and it was abuse. So, and I also have realized that I started setting boundaries. And once I started setting boundaries, it was actually easier for me to also realize what he was doing was abuse.
And how did
And
he respond to the boundaries?
he doesn't respect boundaries at all. He constantly crosses them, which is why I ended up breaching him another 5 times. So
Did he
he,
get angry with the boundaries?
yes, every single time. Every single time I set the boundary, he would cross it. He would get more abusive and he would get angry each time and stuff. And even I remember one incident that I laugh now because it was just so funny and like so he had taken something that belonged to my daughter. It was her first tooth that she lost. And he was moving out of where we were living at the time. And I told him that he had to leave it here because it wasn't his. But he was adamant that he was taking it because I had the children and he wanted something of the something that connected him to the children. But because I had made it such a point of that he had to leave it, he had to take it. So but in that moment, I didn't let him affect me. I just kept my boundaries. Set my boundaries. I kept asking him not to talk that way, that it wasn't his and that he needed to leave that. In the end, he's walked out of the house, and I laugh because my son, who would have been 4, 4, 5 at the time, ran out of the house out after him, saying, "You need to give that back. It's not yours. It's River's, which is my daughter."
So your
And so,
son is learning to be strong like his
yeah,
mother.
yeah. So he ran out after him, and he was chasing him into the car, right up to the car door. And I was just, I'm like, I think I, I guess because it's such a powerful understanding that my example had on him, like because I was setting my boundaries, and so he was like, no, that's unacceptable and stuff.
I'm looking out for his sister.
Yeah. And one of the things, because obviously when I was pregnant with my daughter, I'd already had 5 years of therapy, of like all different types of therapy. So, and I'd always known deep down that something wasn't right my whole life. There was something that was, it just never sat right with me. There was always, I'm like, there's something wrong, but I always believed it was me because of the way developmental trauma affects you. You always feel that it's your fault.
And that's a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yes, correct. Correct.
It
That
affects
is
a
a
lot of
lot of
people.
people. Affects a lot of people, especially I find my generation, because we're kind of the transitioning in that it was like the 80s children, we realized that we had that freedom and stuff, but there was also when there was like strict rules and like parents were carrying on stuff, but we also knew that there was something wrong. Like it's hard to explain, but I guess collectively as a generation, we're the ones that changing the molds and changing stuff and realizing no, like this is wrong. Like this is actually trauma. This is abuse. This shouldn't be how it is. This needs to stop. And that was exactly how I was with my daughter. I was very conscious when I was pregnant with her that it stops with me. What was going on, how I was feeling, and what I was going through was never going to happen with her.
So it doesn't get passed on to another generation, the
Correct,
trauma.
that it stopped. It stops. It stops with me. It doesn't go any further. So I did a lot of learning as well. So I did the Circle of Security program to help with my daughter. That was amazing. But I found when I went and tried to do it in a group situation, as I actually got triggered the first session that I went to, and I had to, I contacted the people who were running it. It was through our child health program in Queensland, where I live in Australia. So I contacted them and said, look, I was triggered. I wasn't able to do this. So they actually got me some sessions with their psychologist. So she special then who obviously being in child's health specializes in children and development and all
That's
of
awesome.
those areas. So I actually did. I still was able to do the circle of security, but in a situation where I was comfortable. So it was one on one. I was able to run through stuff, and it was amazing, and it helped a lot. And I also did also have continued after that, finished my own psychologist. And looking back now, I realize the psychologist that I had, she pointed out a few times that what my husband was doing was controlling and abusive, but obviously they can't come straight out, but they can only indicate that something's happening. But looking back now, I realize. And one of the things too that I think helped me to realize what was going on is towards the end of my relationship was that I actually did some EMDR with her. And I found that to be amazing for me because it helped me with two major traumas from my childhood to do with my parents. And it really did change how it affected me. Now I realize physically, but at that stage I was still living in my head because after all of the training, especially through doing body processing, the training for that, I realized that most of my life I've actually lived in a functional freeze. So I've been constantly my nervous system has always been constantly activated. It wasn't until I was finally able to rest once my ex-husband was actually out of the house we were living in, and I had started setting my boundaries and I was sticking to them, and I was able to start relaxing my body, and so my cortisol levels were not as high as they always were, which was why my body was shutting down before. The toll that living in a functional freeze has taken on my body is a lot. I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia about just about 18 months ago, and learning to
I'm
cope
sorry to
with
hear that.
that. It's fine. It's just part of the process, and I don't see it as it's not a negative, because it actually is a indicator for me to say, you know what, you need to slow down and rest. You need to take things slower. And also my son is neurodivergent. So he was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, or the hyperactive one, so ADHD. He's also a level 2 on the autism spectrum as well. So I always, and I realize now that he would not be as high on the scale. He would still have the ADHD and some form of the autism spectrum disorder, because it's actually genetically within both sides of his my family and his dad's family. But I realized that his neurodivergency is actually higher due to the trauma, and due to the fact that I was in such a heightened state of fight and flight while I was pregnant with him. But he's actually been one of my greatest teachers, and my daughter, in my son, in the fact that he has taught me that I need to be in the now. I need to slow
Very
down.
present.
I need to be present, because he definitely has the ADHD trait of being time blind. So he has no concept of time. He has no concept of foresight. He has no concept of hindsight. So the fact that he doesn't have those, I actually have to change the way I parent him and the way I explain things to him. So he has to be very present and has to be like, in that moment, this is the consequences of your action in that moment. I can't, or this is your reward for your actions in this moment. It cannot be something that needs that. So if you do this today, you can get this tomorrow. His stuff needs to be in that moment. So it's teaching me that I have to be present and I have to be in that moment. And just through doing the study and my own research, I've read the book The Body Keeps the Score.
That's an excellent book. I recommend it to
Yeah,
all of our viewers.
yes, it is amazing. And if you have Spotify and you pay for it, you can actually get it as a audiobook. So you can listen to it without having to try and find a copy of it. I've also read The Mind Body Connection, which was an amazing book as well. And that definitely got me onto both of those definitely got me onto the path of embodiment and understanding how our bodies tell us when there's something wrong. And we need to learn to listen to our bodies. I have known that for a long time, but it was like, well, actually, how do I listen to my body? How do I understand what it's trying to tell me? Okay, this is happening, but what does it mean? How is it affecting me? And when I found embodied processing, it was kind of like that light bulb moment. And everything that I had learnt or read or had been told kind of all came together in that one modality, in that one way
That's
of
amazing.
looking at stuff. And I realized, and through doing the study of embodied processing, actually was able to learn how to actually listen to my body. And by doing the resourcing and being safe and creating those safe spaces within myself and within my mind, and able to understand that it doesn't matter how big a trauma is, if it's trapped in your nervous system, it's trapped and it needs to be released. It doesn't matter how insignificant it may seem to somebody else, to you and your body and to your mind, it is a major trauma because it is not completed. Once you're able to realize that it doesn't matter, and that you are, one major thing that you need to understand and people need to know is that you are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be fixed.
Well
All you
said.
need to do, yeah, all you need to do is just accept and find the way and connect with people that can help you process these things that have been unprocessed. There's no right or wrong way for you to do it. It is however it works for you. Because I find I've tried lots of different methods and lots of different modalities, and I've done acupuncture as well, and I've just, whatever resonates and works for you. One of the hardest things I think as a, especially developmental childhood trauma, is understanding that the way you were treated, it was not acceptable, and that there are better ways. And yeah, you need to learn to understand yourself, and that yeah, that you're not broken,
And there is a
and
better
you
way to
are,
live.
yeah, there's a better way to live. I'm actually I am actually totally living proof that there is a better way and a better understanding. And it's through my lived experiences that I've come to this point and understand that by doing all of this and lived having my lived experiences and sharing my story, my hope is that I can at least help one other person to understand and to move past where they are, and to become the better person and become who they're meant to be. Because one thing too is that I've always struggled with is identity. And I never really had an identity. I never understood who I was or what I was meant to do. You know how, like, when you're at school and they go, okay, what's your goal here? What's your goal? What do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? I was always drew a blank. I never had any understanding. And the worst ones were job interviews. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it was like my body would just shut down and going, I don't know. I don't know how to set a goal. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see myself anywhere in 5 years. I don't understand this, because it was all foreign to me. All of that concept, all of that, like, wishing and hoping and dreaming, and you like, I always felt that it was unattainable for me. Like, it wasn't meant to be. I was just existing in my life until now. So,
Well, you're one strong woman. And I believe too, like everything you went through, you've learned that you don't deserve to be treated like that. You deserve to be treated with respect, compassion, and love.
yes.
And that's what you're teaching your children.
And that's yeah, definitely. And I want them to not, I feel guilty, and I've worked on this, and that they did have to experience that trauma for their first few years of their life. but I feel empowered, and I'm just trying to find there's no way to describe it really, other than that I'm thankful that I've learnt what I have, and that I have the knowledge and the skills now to be able to give them the tools and understanding now while they're children, so that they can learn and become the people that they're meant to be. The trauma that they've had from their life forward, and I'm doing everything I can possibly can to ensure that doesn't happen.
That's beautiful. So your family is on a healing journey together.
Yes, yeah, I didn't ever even think about that, but yeah, you're correct. We're on a journey together. And it's through them too that I'm learning so much. And like, yeah, and my son was definitely sent to me as my teacher, as one of my biggest teachers on this stuff and on my journey. He's definitely my challenge. Though my daughter is too. So I'm not sure about everyone else that has daughters, but as they get older, I find sometimes I look at her and I'm like, and I have this realization I'm arguing with myself.
I have a daughter. She's 2 years old, so something to look forward
Yeah,
to, I guess.
yeah. I just look at her because like she's 8, and like she is just like the most sassiest little thing I've ever come across. Like, but I can't, sometimes it's hard because it's just like, I wish you didn't have that, because it's just like, it's so aggravating. But then at other times, I'm just so glad that your personality has not changed. You are still being you. And even my son, he's still being him. And I have also found that they actually have also been some of my biggest triggers for triggering some of my trauma stuff, because they're children, and a lot of my trauma triggers that still need to be worked through are from my childhood. So it's very, and but awareness is huge. Once you're aware of what triggers you, you're more able in the moment to bring yourself out of that state, so that with your awareness comes understanding and knowledge. And I've learnt that I need to realize that I was in a trigger state because my behavior I feel was unacceptable towards my children. But the difference is that I was aware of it, I acknowledged it. I will say to my children, I will apologize to them for my behavior, and I will say and I'll explain why, so that they understand that what I did wasn't acceptable and that I'm working on it. But no one's perfect.
No one's perfect.
Not at
So,
all. And there's no such thing as perfect. And if you try for it, then you're just gonna fail.
and what advice do you have for our viewers?
The best thing is, I guess, just awareness and knowledge, and know that you are not broken and you don't need to be fixed. You just need to look to find your people that you feel safe with and that you can connect with, and finding the right environment that you are safe, because unless you are safe within your body, and that there is no way that you can heal. Healing is a lifestyle and a journey, It is not an overnight fix. It is a constant learning and revisiting and finding ways to heal your trauma or anything that's, I guess everything is a trauma when you come down to it, because it's all about how your nervous system was not completed, that your fight and flight had been triggered, and that you wasn't able to come to completion. And then each time your body remembers. Your body remembers more than you realize. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I think I already spoke about some of that anyway through the my healing journey anyway and stuff. But yeah, definitely reaching out. Just reaching out to someone that you feel safe with and connected to. I know myself, like it's hard to trust. Trust is huge. Being able to trust someone to enough to be able to ask for help, because sometimes the people that you ask for help from are not always the correct people, but you will find them. Just keep asking for help and you'll find the person that will help you.
And listen to your body. And if your
Oh,
body
100%, 100%.
says they're safe,
Yes.
sit on it. Listen to your mind and your body and just sit on it and feel into it and move
Mhm.
slowly. And you'll learn who you can trust and who you cannot.
That is correct. Yeah, and that's part of the process is yeah, learning who makes you feel safe and yeah, listening to your body. Again, that is hard to hop out of your mind and listen to your body. But EP or embodied processing is actually a fantastic way to learn how to get into your body and out of your head, because you don't need to tell your story. And it's all about being curious and noticing and just asking the question, okay, why do I feel like that? Why is this happening? And yeah, that's basically what I would think. Yeah, just listen to your body, ask the question, and notice, why is that happening? Why am I feeling this way?
Well, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you
And
so much
thank you.
for, yeah, I appreciate the invitation. And like I said, if my story can and understanding can help other people, just even if it's just one other person, then I've done my job.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Erin. Have a